Can the U.S. economy be accurately described as a free market?
No, I don't think so. I mean, of course, a free economy is in many ways kind of an ideal type. You know, you could say, isn't it another one of these, things like nirvana or the kingdom of God? The reality is, though, is that we can approximate free economies. And certainly Hong Kong, for instance, prior to becoming a part of the People's Republic of China was a very good example of this. In fact, it still is. The Chinese government, I think, realizes that it has a jewel on its hands. And so if you look at the Index of Economic Freedom, every year Hong Kong still ends up at the top. What's at the bottom? It's inevitably North Korea. And so that sort of tells you something about what's going on, because that's the role of freedom. So it's possible. It's something we can bring about. We've seen what it looks like. And in fact, if you look at American history, I think there was a time in which our economy was much more free. So the question is, what is the American economy right now? Well, it's not socialism. I think that make a mistake if we say we're basically dealing with socialism. I mean, if you use that broadly, yeah, maybe. But the official definition of socialism is something like state ownership or common ownership of the means of production, which inevitably means the state ownership of private property, right? We don't have that. We still have a private sector, right? We even have private banks. We have private shops. We get an income and all these kinds of things. So we're not living in a socialist system. What I think we're living in is something that we could just call cronyism. In cronyism, it's sort of like the corporatism of the 19th and 20th centuries, in which rather than a free and open exchange and free competition, right, in the marketplace, what we have is collusion between certain large businesses and government. You saw this in the financial crisis with some of the bailouts. People, I think intuitively knew it seems like there's some well-connected financial institutions that are being treated differently than others. Well, I call that cronyism. I wouldn't even call it crony capitalism because it implies it's a type of capitalism. It's not economic freedom in any case. And the frustrating thing about cronyism is it's actually hard to diagnose because, if you've got a socialist system and government owns everything, right, then if something happens in the economy, the government gets the blame. Cronyism, though, it operates in which government regulators control a great deal in the private sector, but if something happens in the economy, the regulators can blame the private sector. And so it's actually difficult to see, okay, who's doing the bad stuff here? And so that's the dilemma of cronyism. I think cronyism is an example of what I would call soft tyranny, as opposed to the hard tyrannies that we saw in the 20th century. Those are easy to recognize. People run out in the streets and people start getting rounded up and sent to internment camps. We're going to know what that is, right? Mm-hmm. What we don't know how to recognize is the so slow kind of creeping ratchet of the administrative state, which slowly takes control of every decision in the private sphere.